Welcome back to Radical and Relevant, where each day we explore the genius of the gospel. Today's reading is from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 6, verses 14 through 29. King Herod heard of it, for Jesus' name had become known. Some said John the Baptizer had been raised from the dead. That is why these powers are at work in him. But others said, it is Elijah. And others said, it is a prophet, like one of the prophets of old. But when Herod heard of it, he said, John, whom I beheaded, has been raised. For Herod had sent and seized John and bound him in prison for the sake of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife, because he had married her. For John said to Herod, it is not lawful for you to have your brother's wife. And Herodias had a grudge against him and wanted to kill him. But she could not, for Herod feared John, knowing that he was righteous and holy man, and kept him safe. When he heard him, he was much perplexed, and yet he heard him gladly. But an opportunity came when Herod, on his birthday, gave a banquet for his courtiers and officers and the leading men of Galilee. For when Herodias' daughter came in and danced, she pleased Herod and his guests. And the king said to the girl, ask me for whatever you wish, and I will grant it. And he vowed to her, whatever you ask me, I will give you, even half of my kingdom. And she went out and said to her mother, what shall I ask? And she said, the head of John the Baptizer. And she came in immediately with haste to the king and asked, saying, I want you to give me at once the head of John the Baptist on a platter. And the king was exceedingly sorry, but because of his oaths and his guests, he did not want to break his word to her. And immediately the king sent a soldier of the guard and gave orders to bring his head. He went and beheaded him in prison and brought his head on a platter and gave it to the girl, and the girl gave it to her mother. When his disciples heard of it, they came and took his body and laid it in a tomb. It's an epic story today. And what do we see? We see Herod's life just collapsing. You know, we see his morality just collapsing before our very eyes. But we see this struggle that he has. There's a fantastic line. It says, when he heard him, which is when Herod heard Jesus, he was much perplexed, and yet he heard him gladly. He wanted to hear what John the Baptist had to say. He recognized that he was a righteous and holy man. And when he heard John the Baptist speaking, he was perplexed. Why? Because his life didn't align with what John was saying. He was perplexed because he knew there was truth and beauty and goodness and wisdom in what John the Baptist was saying. But his life didn't align with it. And so that created this feeling of being perplexed. And yet he heard him gladly. What is that? Like our hearts are glad. When we hear truth, when we hear wisdom, our hearts are glad. Our minds are glad. Our souls are glad. And so he was feeling this joy, this gladness when he was with John, when he was hearing John speak. But his mind was perplexed because his life was out of alignment with the truth and wisdom that John the Baptist was sharing. We have the same experiences, right? We hear the gospel, we hear the teachings of Jesus, and we get perplexed, we get unsettled, we get restless. Why? Because we realize Our lives aren't in alignment with the gospel. And in hearing it, we're challenged to realign our lives with what God is calling us to. Have a great day. And remember, be bold, be Catholic.